One of my favorite expressions to use when I'm explaining consciousness is the sum of our parts. That we are each the sum of our parts, and that kind of it's very generalist, a general statement, and it doesn't really go into detail on what that might mean. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky because people will think that it means, the input of the parents and the grandparents and the social conditioning and their friends and who they hang out with and all that kind of stuff and their job and that sort of thing. That's the sum of who you are, father, mother, parent, that kind of thing. But those are just the obvious kind of outer world identities. But the sum of our parts is actually way bigger than that. And it gets down to, that's that the piece of me, that a piece of humanity that I'm interested in. And me, it's funny, I speak a lot from my own experience because that's where you are the author of the authority is the author of your own author at right? So I can speak from how I've learned to know thyself, right? And the sum of your parts, and it doesn't mean I've got it all figured out. I'm still going there. I'm still peeling back layers, but that includes all the inputs of decisions I've made along the way. So let's say I watched a movie and I didn't like certain characters and there's some stereotyping in there, but it kind of confirmed a bit of an idea I had about certain people. And so the movie basically, I had a choice in the movie to kind of go to see it as a stereotype or to actually to go, well, not all people like that do this or whatever. Maybe it's a racial thing, with violence or something, and it stereotypes a certain group for, violence, or certain people that look like, they're uneducated and there's a certain, the way they look or something, that sort of thing, right? And there's a whole bunch of stereotypes out there. But every time I confirm it by watching it and I'm in agreement to that, it's like, another notch on my belt, kind of thing it's a vibrational accord. I've given permission for that to be real in my reality. But if I can recognize it from my higher state as the stereotype was a choice that certain people from experiences were allowing those experiences to inform them, and then they created an expectation, because expectation is actually calling something in again to the future. So whenever somebody had something happened and it kind of left an imprint, then they went into the next, let's say, situation, and there's an expectation, and then it happened, so they got to be right, they pat themselves on the back, and that becomes a code within them. And so every time you have that happen, whether it's, books as a kid, or, movies, or, things that happen on the playground, the bullies and the this, and the teacher talks to you a certain way. And, maybe she's just confirming that you're not very smart and you believed it, or because your parents maybe, said something. And so these confirmations, these are, they call them a confirmation bias, but they end up becoming codes that you've given permission to be active. And so the sum of our parts, it's all those little, I'm going to say, lenses where we weren't actually seeing the situation from that zoomed out perspective of that pattern was just the experience, and it wasn't, it didn't have to be a set pattern, right? It's, yeah, how do I explain that? Where we had a choice to just watch it go by and not confirm it or give it any validation. No notches on the belt, right? Because we observed it. It's literally allowing it to just be let go and release. And especially, and these are really important, if when we're in that developmental phase, which is why, letting your kids watch, consume too much TV or movies that had a lot of, I'm going to say, political stuff or subconscious kind of stuff, maybe a lot of innuendo kind of stuff that should have been above their head, but it's kind of passive there. There's a lot of things that are kind of, that add up and add up and add up. And that's the thing, is we kind of have to start really paying attention to, is that a flavor I want around my family, or just in my life? So let's say I'm this adult, I've grown up, I'm almost 60 years old. I'm now able to look at all my patterns and everything that I was in accord with, right? That I'd accepted as a truth. And I'm backtracking now and unpacking them and going, wait a minute, there's another side here. And just because I experienced it this way, or someone else experienced it this way, and maybe I read their account of it, and that was enough for me to agree, right? Because I didn't necessarily live the experience. That's where we have, it's like a lot of secondhand information. And that's where, the media is doing us a disservice, because if something didn't actually show up in your reality, right? Real at E, right? And the energy, E equals energy, right? If it's not showing up in a direct way, and we just are, whether it's through our phone or on the TV or on the computer, and we're reading an account and it's kind of secondhand, um, you kind of have to back up a little bit and go, okay, these are timelines that are being experienced all over and I would never deny anybody's time experience of a timeline, right? And we're all expressing, right? We've all got throat chakras. We all speak our bit, right? Whether it's truth or not, I don't know, because that's on them if it's not. But there is, um, and we know there's been that power of other structures. So when you understand that that's been in place, then you also understand that some of those outlets for giving information were within that structure, and so they weren't set up to empower you. So where we're waking up to is going, is that information, does this empower me, right? Or how do I feel with this information? And let's say it's saying that there's something really bad happening in another part of the planet right now, and it's got their spin on it, right? Because that's all it is. Ions got a spin, right? Or you're in neutrality, right? Which is really where we want to be until we actually are confronted with it in a way where we can make a better decision, right? And if you are only getting information from one source, you are not going to be able to fill out all the seats at the table. And so that's where there's a news company out there. What is it called? Is it Ground News or something? I can't remember. But they actually give it the leaning, whether it's left leaning, right leaning, or middle of the ground. They've been trying to identify the slant to the piece, the bias, and then you have a choice of whether you want to read it or not. But if you are only getting one side of a story all the time, then going to that news source where you actually can get the other side of it, it's actually really important, because you really want to get to 0 point. It doesn't mean, this is not where you're not allowed to have a personal opinion, but honor your personal opinion for the sum of your parts, that is this older personality version of you, and they call it your ego, right? The personality that we've created, that it has agreed to this person, all these inputs, creating the sum of these parts that give me that willingness to believe these things, right? Or to align to those certain stories in that flavor, in that way. But zoom out far enough where you allow yourself a higher truth to come in, where you're not going to die on that mountain, and let go of that one perspective, right? Because you don't need to be right. None of us need to be. All we need to know is that every person is holding a different vibrational coordinate because of the sums of their parts, because of everything, every pivot where they agreed, oh yeah, that stereotype, or oh yeah, that situation, bad or good. And every time they did this, every time they experienced and encountered something, school, books, movies, right? Office, jobs, food, blah, blah, blah. It's all decisions, spins, decision, spin, decision, align, 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 align. And now your boxcar has a lot of different chords to it, getting pushed and pulled in different directions, right? There's going to be some distortions in there. You were not getting the equal and opposite information every time to balance out, right? Because everything on the planet, every action has an equal and opposite, right? That's the law of correspondence. And so if you're not observing both, you know there's a distortion somewhere, right? And so calling things back into 0 point is observing your personality for where it's at, right? And what is showing up in my reality, because that's immediate. And if it's showing up for you in that way, now there's a magnetic point of attraction for you that you really want to get clear on, really want to heal, want to love, right? That's the key. Love is one of those. It's the neutralizer. It's the equalizer. It's the part that will go like this, and just gracefully bring it back to zero, right? So love it all, right? That's the compassion if you can't love, right? If it's a story with somebody else or other people and they're having a difficult time, compassion is an equalizer that you share with others, right? So it's the same energy, right? And none of it will throw you out. Now, sympathy throws you out because it starts taking you in their distortion a bit. And so really be careful about being pulled too far out of your zone. But compassion is beautiful. Compassion is a non, it's not conditional, right? It doesn't have judgments, right? Sympathy still does. It's got some stickiness there. So yeah, so use those energetics to get yourself back into the state where now you can look at the round table. You can see the sum of parts of different people, what they must have agreed to along the way to experience their distortions or their whatever position on the around every story is, whether they're right, left, whatever middle, it doesn't really matter. But you have an idea of their vibrational permissions, right? And it's not obvious. That's actually a really tricky one because again, there's probably 50 decisions that jaded every distortion. You know what I mean? And we just don't know what they are. And that's why it's so easy for me to go to compassion, because nobody wanted to create such a distortion where you couldn't see the divine truth in everything, right? None of us did. But from the personality, right? We all want to be right. I mean, that's, honestly, if you ask everybody, do you want the wrong answer? Do you want the right answer? Everyone wants the right answer. But our soul came in to go, okay, but how are we going to grow? We need that friction. We need the sand in the oyster, right? So the stories that we were all, encountering, from all these different points of, vibrational points, so our perspectives are all unique, and it's all getting fed back into the one. We're fleshing out that database. All these points of light that we are creating this beautiful, you can call it the superconscious, right? It's like it's like the solar system, right? If every one of those stars was, a point of attraction or a point of perception for each, soul, and I know, and that's way out there, but we are quantum entangled, and we don't know what this inner spark of each of us looks like in the outer world, in the beyond. Like, we know there's this scale of Deborah, but this is, the 3D scale. But, there's, what's the 5D scale look like? Well, it's a little more multidimensional. It's probably more my auric field, right? And then the next layer and the next layer. We've got so many dimensions, and we don't know how far it goes, right? It's beyond our scope of understanding. So, not getting too caught up on what the sum of our parts is presenting at that time, and trying to default to compassion and love, and zooming out to see the bigger pattern, because that's how we grow through it, right? And just creating allowances for, your brothers and sisters to all grow through their own process and experience as well. And I think that's really important right now. That whole piece about love thy neighbor, has kind of been lost. And even the gaslighting of all the Christians right now and stuff. And I don't attach to one religion, because I zoom out and I see them all as branches of that one tree, right? And, when all those seats are filled, and they just have different flavors of the religion, but it's all at the core. It's believing in the similar thing. There's these, I'm going to say, they're not hard and fast rules, but they're just belief systems that got put in place that were meant to help humanity and help them find their inner, peace and love and compassion, and how to collectively cooperate together and build better communities and that sort of thing. I don't think anybody set up the Bible to disempower anybody, to say that there was a God outside of them. Like, that's what a lot of people are saying, that, they didn't want you to know that the power was within you. And, I want to give humanity a little bit more credit, and to say that their consciousness at that time wasn't available to hear it in that way. So you can only meet information at the level of your consciousness where you're at, right? And it's the same with meeting other people. they're going to meet you with where they're at, and you're going to meet them where you're at. You might see them as a bigger, I'm going to say, you can see their personality, but you can maybe see their bigger piece in the whole tapestry of humanity, right? They may not. And so you can still hold compassion for them there, even if they're in struggle, even if they're not presenting to you as very nice, right? And they might not be able to meet you in this higher, beautiful, compassionate space you're holding for them. But that's really not our business how they meet us, anyways, because they do have their own, some of their parts that they're working through in that moment, and eventually what they figure out in this lifetime will be in the database, even if it's just on their deathbed, and they, all of a sudden they have this big awakening on their deathbed, and they, do all their lives flash before them, and they have a new epiphany. It's going to be in the database of our expanded, we'll call it the superconscious, anyways. So, which is what we're shifting into. Is we are, the enlightened piece is when we have every point of light activated, because that's a space we can hold for everybody. So, and it's, again, not putting anybody else in darkness, not judging. It's just kind of in this, it's the bigger sum, right? It's wholesome, right? And it's where we're all striving to be there and to live there more often, and to not let your personality get too triggered into the lower story. Notice where you're getting triggered, because that's an important piece, right? Every time you shift back down into a piece where your personality isn't feeling safe, or is feeling, being mistreated somewhere or something, these are just old codes, those sums that you agreed to along the way, that we're now going to let go and release, and pivot, shift, upgrade, whatever it is that we need to let go. That's how I feel things when I'm letting go. I do feel like it's a bit of a Tetris game inside of me, when I'm doing that alchemy, that shifting, and so it's fun and it's playful. I don't take it serious anymore, and that's why, yeah, I've got to that. Like, I just feel like we're in a playground. I feel like we've expanded to this space where, what are we co-creating now in here, and what are we letting go, and what are we not taking too serious, and what space can we hold for others who maybe aren't quite on the path yet, but I'm going to see them joining us eventually, at least. And again, I don't know how or when, or I have no attachment to what it looks like, but I'm not going to say, no, they're not going to make it, or they're not, whatever. I'm just not going to deny them the opportunity, right? It's yeah. So yeah, I thank you for listening. I really appreciate having an audience that I can share, just conversations with, that we can kind of go back and forth. And the more of us that interact with ideas that put more freedom and space in the field, the more of us that kind of can go, yeah. And I might just be confirming ideas that you've already had, but the way my language comes, it's maybe we had seats at the table side by side, but now I'm helping you flesh it in this way, and other people are going to come at it this way, and we're going to eventually have a beautiful fleshed out database, right? Which is that super conscious, because we're allowing the language to come in through a lot of different ways, and just energetic as well. So mostly when I'm coding, it's actually more with my hands, and I'm, I've got all the astrology in your hands, all the planets are represented, all the numerology is there, all the elements. So there's a whole bunch of things in our hands that come through faster and quicker when I'm coding. I'm in that hologram, which is part of the binary code of our whole system, but I can do it within my own hologram, or if I sit in front of somebody, I can through their vibrational permission and their intent, right? The intent ions. I work with our higher teams, and we come through and we work in their hologram, and whatever that person is available for in that moment, because you can send light and love to somebody all till the cows come home, but they can only receive it if they're available for it, if they have the permissions in place, that they believe that there's more out there. They don't have to know everything about quantum coding, but let's say they know about Reiki, or they understand quantum entanglement, right? Or they understand the power of love, whatever their permissions are. It kind of allows us to work a little bit into that, expanding this wholeness, right? And every person that I sit in that space with, I'm also expanding through them. They're expanding through me, and it's like a shared expansion, And it's a beautiful place to be, and beautiful playground. So yeah, looking forward to meeting you there. Okay, take care.